Welcome back to the Altars and Ashes podcast, where we believe the Lord's kingdom still advances, the fire still burns, and God is rebuilding his people through households of faith. I am Brady Davis Fleming.
I'm Austin Tucker.
And I'm Robbie Stringer.
Today we're talking about some of our, shouldn't be laughing for this, worst church experiences.
You have to laugh at this.
I know. And we're going to talk about what God taught us through them. You know, this is not an episode where we're just going to sit around and talk about church hurt, but, you know, there are very real things that happen in church. It's a bunch of imperfect people, and we just want to get in here and talk about that. So I'll start off by saying, if you stay in a church long enough, you will find a way to be disappointed. True, false?
100%.
Even if you're not trying to find a reason, it'll happen.
It will happen. Right.
And I always, one of the things I always say in our new membership class, that if you come to Grace Point, I promise you, I will eventually fail you. But the Bible says love covers a multitude of sins. But I also guarantee if you stay here long enough, you will eventually fail me.
Yeah.
And church family is like
because
all
we're going to
families.
fail each other.
We're messy because
Yeah.
we're a bunch of sinners saved by grace.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so one of the things that I thought to myself here was, I was like, okay, I've been in ministry technically, like 2 months. so I don't have a ton of experience on this side
Feels
of the
like
game.
it's been forever.
I know.
It's been miserable for me. How about you, Robbie?
Yeah.
You know what? God teaches you through these difficult times.
Patience. I've
Yeah.
learned so much patience over these last 2
Trials and
months.
tribulations. That's what I'm here for. But, you know, I've been a member of a church for a long, long time. And one of the things that God has really done in a weird way for me was over the past, what are we? We're in 2026. Over the past 9 or 10 years, some of my best friends in the whole world have been pastors. And I wasn't a pastor. And the weird thing was hearing, you know, they were able to confide in me because I wasn't part of that realm. And so I heard some of these stories that they were dealing with, and I didn't have to deal with it. So I was just kind of a listening ear. So I'm interested to hear some of your guys, you know, things as leaders of a church, as folks that grew up in, you know, youth ministry, but also went to schools that were tied to a church, but also, you know, you learned your theology and things like that at those schools. So this is just an episode for us to get in here and just kind of help reassure folks that have been through different heartaches. Yep.
Yeah.
That ultimately your church is made up of a bunch of flawed individuals, and it's not necessarily an attack on you. Sometimes things just happen, and maybe it'll bring a little bit of clarity, but also maybe some humor. Who knows?
I don't know if you ever had this said to you early in the ministry, Robbie, but I remember the older pastors telling me, your calling is, you know, people get called to the ministry and they think everybody's going to applaud you. And I remember older preachers saying, your life is one for the slaughter, that you have to have a heart soft enough to love God's saints and skin thick enough that when you get stabbed, you still hug them again.
Say it again. Heart thick enough to what?
A heart soft enough to love the saints.
Okay.
And skin thick enough that when you're stabbed, you still hug them again.
Okay.
And that has been the ministry for me. And it's funny because I meet all the time individuals who quit church because of heartache.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they think heartache is one of those things that a pastor doesn't know.
Okay.
But it's the very marker, I think, of ministry. And if you ever wonder why, and I'm not trying to be separatist, I don't believe in the clergy-laity divide. I think it's a bad thing.
Can you define that just real quick?
Well, that whole concept, you got the pastors over here, and then you have the laity over here, and we're God's anointed blood. And everybody who's redeemed by grace is God's anointed.
We're all the same.
We're all the same.
Just unique
With that
gifting.
being said, there are calling, and God gave us as gifts to the church. The church is not our gift. We're gifts to the church.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, there is a lot of heartache that comes with pastoring people because churches we're all broken people saved by grace. And I've gone through a lot. So I became a youth pastor at 19. So this will mark my 24th year in full-time ministry. And there's been a lot more good memories than bad memories, but there has been some rough years. And I won't start first, but there's a lot of heartache. And I think we need to make sure we focus on the good. The fact that Christ, and church members need to learn this, that Christ, by his goodness and his grace and by his Holy Spirit's power and by the commandments of God's word, will bring you through bitterness and have you stay faithful to his bride and love his church. I don't want to take over right now because I'm sure I'll be talking a lot. What do you have, Robbie?
I would just say that, Austin, you were saying that you had older preachers, tell you that there are certain types of certain times in ministry that it was going to be hard. I didn't really have to have anybody tell me that because, my dad was a pastor often. And when he wasn't a pastor, he was usually working in a church in some type of ministry role. And so I got to watch things like that firsthand.
Yeah.
And the struggles that do come with that. And so it's definitely true. It's not, I don't know if there's people out there who maybe think being a pastor is easy. You only have to work like Sunday morning and Wednesday night or something like that. But I think some of the biggest heartaches that can come, and I'm sure we'll talk about different ones as we're going through this, but if you're a good pastor, you love your people.
Yeah.
And, especially, you're with them a lot. You talk to them. And so you grieve with them when they're going through difficult things. And especially if you're a pastor, you want to see them saved. You want to see them grow in the Lord. And for me personally, like some of the hardest things is, especially me, because I've worked with teenagers a lot, it's to see them make decisions that are going to harm them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do everything but beg them not to make these decisions, not to go this direction. And when they don't do it, what's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have this heartbreak of anticipation. You have the heartbreak when the consequences finally come. And then it's like, will they then come back to the Lord and kind of start building back up again? Or are they just going to keep
going down that path? Yeah.
And it's people don't think about that if they've not been in that position. But I got to say, it is difficult, especially when you're dealing with teenagers, because teenagers, and I'm sure you could say this about adults too, but teenagers, they lack a lot of experience. And so they're not a lot of times looking for counsel, because when you lack as much experience as they have, they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And so it is hard sometimes to see people's decisions harm them.
That's a big part of the pastorate that I think is really hard for the new pastor. And you, Robbie, you know what I'm talking about. The person comes in, their family's growing, everything's great. All of a sudden, this family leaves church. They're mad at you. You don't know why they're mad at you. There's brokenness. And I remember, like, in my early days, weeping every single time people left the church. We'd get a new family. I'd fall in love with them. I'd fall in love with their kids. And listen, as a pastor, man, I have this. This is going to sound hokey, but like when we get new families and I get kids, I always in my mind go, I can't wait to see them get married. I can't wait to see them have kids. I want to see these kids grow up. I want to see what happens to them. I want to invest in these people's lives. And then for some reason, either they posted something on Facebook and I didn't put a heart on it, or they were gone for 3 weeks and I didn't catch it because, and I'll be honest with you, I wish I was so aware of everybody. I always caught it, but I just not who I am.
Well, and sometimes you may have caught it. You just didn't reach out because it was, you
Things
might have noticed
up
on week 3 and they were actually gone 2 weeks before that or something.
Well, and it's funny because like people don't think pastors have families too.
Yeah.
And so like I have one adult child, 2 teenage children. Guess what happens to my week sometime between doing my responsibility in the school and the church? There are weeks when I have so much chaos that everything gets lost, just like every other family.
And at one time you had 3 young children.
Yes. That was even harder back then. And I've been thinking about that. My freedom in the ministry has really increased in the last couple of years. I wouldn't have traded being a dad for anything in the world, but that is true. And people tend to wear their emotions on their sleeves, and honesty. And it's funny, as a pastor, I want to scream, we're not here to worship you.
Yeah.
We're here to worship Christ.
Right.
But you got to bring them to a maturity to grasp that truth. And a lot of Christians end up out the back door before they grasp that maturity. And they're usually like 3 or 4 churches in before they can finally grasp that reality. And it's unfortunate because they don't end up getting discipled under people who genuinely love them.
Maybe let me ask you, maybe this is a dumb question, but why do you mentioned like people you didn't notice that they weren't there or whatever. What in your experience has been the reason that people leave church?
Honestly,
I mean, I'm sure there's various reasons, but
it is so varied.
Okay.
It's some form of dissatisfaction, whether
so that they've sort of made it about them a little bit.
Yeah, well, not always. It's a form of dissatisfaction, whether it's real or
perceived.
Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes it is real. Mm-hmm. I have failed people, but that's because I'm not God.
Right.
I think the hard thing in those situations is sometimes people just disappear.
Yeah.
And they don't come to you and say, hey, I'm really struggling with being here because of, and then they lay out what the problem is. The problem is sometimes they just leave and you don't know.
Which we had an instance a month or two ago where somebody came and had a feeling that they were ready to go, and it was by God's grace that they even came and said anything, because I think we were able to kind of speak some truth and life into that situation.
And a lot of it,
but they could have just as easily left.
Well, and it's perceived things.
Yeah.
Like we had an instance in our church of a woman who kept taking over the ladies' fellowship groups and trying to proselytize them to her theology.
Yeah.
Well, we're the ones, us elders are the ones who answered for God for the church. And so we met with this lady and we said, listen, we understand. And she did have a deep theological mind.
Mm-hmm.
She did. We said, hey, we understand where you're at. We understand you need a challenge. We'll give you what we call a deep dive night where we can have these debates about the stuff you're pushing. And I gave her an opportunity to meet with us, to which her response was, that's not what I want. I want the fellowship. She wanted to be able to say what she wanted and influence the other young ladies who couldn't keep up with her. Well, she leaves. Well, through the grapevine, and by the way, people, go back to the horse's mouth, because through the grapevine, there were some other people of influence who said the elders did not handle the situation properly. But they never actually knew how we handled it.
Yeah.
They thought we just ran her off. We gave her opportunities and we encouraged her to stay. In fact, Pastor Robbie was in there. We were like, we don't want you to leave. Stay. Let's have these theological discussions. Let's have these deep dive nights. But instead, they exited.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
which they could do. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's their prerogative. But at the same time, I think the thing here is, don't jump to conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, if somebody's saying something about your pastor, go talk to them. Hey, I heard this. Is this true? Because everybody wants people to come and check with them, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody feels that way. And so your pastors do as well. And so a lot of heartache can come to pastors through situations, like that.
Where somebody's talking about them and they haven't had the opportunity to actually even defend it, sort of. Yeah.
Well, just remember, listen, first of all, if you're not a church member, join a church.
We did an episode on that, didn't we?
Yeah, 1st, 2nd Corinthians. The Bible's very clear. Church membership is biblical, and we can go through that another time. Secondly, if you join a church, and you should be a member of a church, understand that church family, just like your biological family, is messy. Listen, I grew up with all brothers. You know how many times we slammed each other's heads in defense? You grew up with all brothers.
3 of them.
Yeah. So Robbie's an only child. He don't know what that's like, but we'd beat the living snot out of each other.
Yep.
We loved each other. Even as adults, we have disagreements, but we very quickly forgive each other, and we're hanging back out again at Christmas or Easter, or I'm talking on the phone with them. And the thing is my dad was so big about beating into our heads. You're brothers.
Yeah.
You love each other. You forgive each other. You strive together. Nothing separates you. Nothing's too big. If Christ can forgive you, you can forgive your brother of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that when it comes to my biological family. Church members need to understand that when it comes to their church family.
Yeah, because ultimately it's a covenant family.
It's a covenant family.
Yeah.
Your church family is messy.
Mm-hmm.
You owe it to your church family to talk to them, talk to your elders, to work things out. And if you're truly a mature Christian, there's two outcomes: agree and agree to disagree. And if you're truly mature, you can agree to disagree and not separate over it. You know, so I think before we get into anything else, hammer this down. Christ died for his bride. His bride during this time is made up of local ecclesias. He loves your local church. You should love your local church. Yeah. And that means loving the broken people in that church for whom Christ died. And that means not holding roots of bitterness, forgiving quickly, and moving forward. So,
and if your pastors have legitimately done something wrong, you coming and talking about that is an opportunity for them to learn.
Be corrected.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I've repented of things as a pastor more than once. And like I said, we're not perfect people. And sometimes you got to understand elder boards will make bad decisions based on bad information. Like there was an instance before we had BD with us. There was an instance, and I'm going to be careful why I say this, where a man came, there was adultery in the past, and he tells us it was years and years ago. And so we're like, you need to tell your wife, but before you tell your wife, let's get you in marriage counseling. That way we lay some foundations for you to help your wife through this. We get them in marriage counseling, they take our advice, and then we find out it was not years and years ago. It was ongoing. The last time was 4 months ago, and there were 3 different women.
Holy cow.
Now, all of a sudden, the wife hears all this and goes, and the elder board suppressed this for 60 days while I was getting, you mean the elder board told you to put me in counseling for 60 days and they should have confronted you. They should have told, we didn't know. And so we made our decision, our advice as elders on what we knew. It happened years ago. You should confess this to your wife because you should get it right. But let's make sure we lay a foundation where y'all can get help. But had we known it was ongoing, it would have been an entirely different way we would have handled it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people get mad at the pastorate. You got to understand, we don't know everything. We're doing our best, knowing we're going to have to answer to God, making the decisions we're making as we're going. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It sounds like to me, and I'm just putting this out there, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of times people don't leave because of sin per se. They leave because they don't really know how to interpret the pain that whatever the situation is in a biblical way.
Yeah, I would say that, whether perceived or real.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Does Robbie have a stance on pain?
Take your time. Take your time.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
Classic. All right. I don't have a full outline for this one, so let's just break it down. You know, Austin, you said that you're in 24 years. Is there a common theme that you would be able to pull on that string and be like, okay, this is the most common reason I see people get hurt in church? I've heard, things like backstabbing, gossiping, things like that. Is that a pretty common one?
I would define it all as a lack of love.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lack of love for one another. It's always a lack of love.
Which is unfortunate because Jesus said that people would know that we're his disciples by the way we love one another.
Yeah. I know every time my family has been personally hurt, it's been a lack of love. A lack of love. And and so I don't want to go down, because there's a reason why pastors become closest friends with other pastors who's been in the pit for a long time.
Yep.
Or those who they perceive as safe. It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
And it's because we're very battle torn from being stabbed over and over again.
Right. And you're cautious, essentially.
We're cautious.
Yeah.
But I can tell you from perceived hurts in the church that weren't true because somebody wanted to split our church. Namely, there was a man who I youth pastored, which he's come and repented to me.
That's cool.
He grew up and became a youth pastor. I started reforming, but I was gently reforming. And part of that early reformation is what the Bible said was true, what the Bible didn't say. I started throwing away traditions.
Okay.
And so my wife, for the first time ever, went from wearing nothing but dresses to having some pants. Okay. That's
now we know.
Yeah. So my wife got her first pair of pants, and she wore it. She would never wear it to church back then, but she wore it to some church activity or something. And all of a sudden, it was scandalous. Mm-hmm. Yes. Because that's not found in the Bible. The whole dress versus that's another.
For those who's listening and saying, I don't understand what's going on here, there are certain branches of conservative Christianity that do teach that, the Bible says that women should not wear that which pertains to a man.
Means
so in other words, no cross-dressing. And so they interpret that, because there was a long time in American culture where women wore dresses, men wore pants. And so in their mindset, well, pants are for men, and so therefore women should not do that. And so if you've never grown up in that mindset, that sounds crazy.
It sounds weird.
But if you've grown up thinking that way, a woman who's been wearing dresses and skirts exclusively for years upon years upon years, like you're describing for your wife, that's a big transition.
It's a huge transition. And it's one of liberty, because it's not a biblical command. In fact, the only way you can get to that conclusion is if you interpret the Bible through Western culture. So you're going to the text, you're reading it through the Western cultural lens, and not all the Western cultural lens, because the virtuous woman in Proverbs 31 girded her loins and worked up a field. But that's another podcast for another time. And they even
interesting though, girding your loins, didn't that mean that she would have been wearing some sort of dress essentially, because you have to tie it, like pull it through?
The Greek is katastole. It's katastole for the effeminate. And in the New Testament, there was different. Women typically wore shorter stoles, typically came to the knee, and that's mostly because of feminine hygiene stuff. Yeah. Men wore longer ones. The reason men would wear longer ones is because they had a sash, and they would pull it up between their legs and pull into that sash when they would work a field, exposing their thighs. Well, 2 Timothy, Paul says a woman should be dressed in modest apparel. That's how it says it in the King James. And that word modest apparel is the Greek kata stole. So kata, just like we get catapult to cut and volt to power, kata is to cut or let down. Stole is the effeminate for the dress. So all Paul was saying is when you meet together for worship. I don't know if this is
accurate or not. I'm going to have to look it up. No, okay.
When you meet together for worship, you should not be girded up. You don't want to distract from worship. You want to be modest so not to distract from worship.
Right.
So, but the group we grew up in said, well, that means dress. It doesn't mean dress at all. That's them interpreting it through a Western lens. With that being said, my wife started wearing dresses, or started wearing pants every now and then. And the guy who I youth pastored was now my youth pastor on staff. He starts meeting with another troublemaker in our church, who then has a secret meeting with the pastor who trained me in the ministry. And they split the church on purpose. But before they split the church, along the way, at one point, my wife was in the parking lot, and some of the older women confronted her about being a bad pastor's wife because she's wearing pants. They started attacking her. My wife got to the point where she didn't even want to come to our church anymore. And this is the church I still pastor. They started attacking her. They started attacking my daughter. People started coming after me and my family to the point where I started begging God to leave the church and go to a different ministry. And the Lord did not open any doors, nor would he give me peace about leaving. And I'm glad, because all these years later, Grace Point's a healthy church, a vibrant church. But the families that I loved and youth pastored for years, the pastor who I loved and trained under for years, the people attacking my wife and my kids, I became bitter. I was so bitter. I was angry at the people who attacked my wife. I was angry at the man who trained me in the ministry, who I love even dearly to this day. I was angry at all these people. And if you go back and listen to sermons during that time, I was preaching as a bitter man. That was before we had plurality of elders.
Yeah.
That was before Brady
Brady
or myself were were at the church.
Oh, yeah. That's long before you guys came.
Yeah.
That was my 4th year in at Grace Point.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that you've learned to deal with that bitterness and let it go, because that begins to like harden your heart, and
It does.
poisons relationships.
But see, it didn't only have to work through it for me, but there was a challenge as the spiritual head of my household to help my wife and kids work through it as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem in a situation like that is if it were just you,
I don't care.
You could just say, I'll work through this. I'll take it.
And see,
but seeing your wife being attacked that way.
That's the one that hurts. And here's the thing, pastors, God typically calls pastors, most of us are pretty thick-skinned. Like, you can attack me all day long, and the first thing I do when I get attacked is I look to the scripture and say, is there any truth? And if there's absolutely no truth in it, I just laugh it off. And I keep going, I don't care if I get attacked. It don't bother me. In fact, that kind of bothers my wife that it don't bother me.
Yeah.
Because like during the whole COVID thing, like I was one of those non-masking guys. That's just who I am. I don't care if you attack me. It doesn't bother me. But when you see your wife say, I don't want to go to that church, and you're meeting with your daughter and you're taking her to another church in town to have a youth group so that she can get away from the kids and the stuff that were attacking her and her dad. And honestly, God knows what he's doing, because I was young and I was mean. And I'm one of those people that if you punch me or bop me in the nose, I dig down and I want to fight. Nowadays, I don't know if I'd have fought like I did back then. But I think God brought me here, and even in my imperfection and immaturity, knew exactly what I needed to be during that time. Because Grace Point was a very unhealthy church.
Yeah.
I mean, extremely unhealthy. So, anyways.
And I think to kind of expand that, how many churches have struggles, and not just with the pastor and his family, but also within the church, so much division and fighting and lack of love because of issues like this that just really don't matter.
It's stupid things.
A biblical principle that's not even biblical being used to attack your own pastor and his wife, and the amount of pain that comes from those types of arguments.
The interesting part is, though, that really goes back to the gossiping. Right? That's kind of where it landed, right? So they were talking about that issue or whatever behind the backs, and maybe she hears it and it's a byproduct,
Well, I think also it's a result of having some unregenerated people in certain locations.
Well, and that's a great point. Let's call that out.
Yeah.
A church is made up of Christians and non-Christians who might be parading as Christians.
100%.
And not to say that Christians aren't going to make mistakes too. Right. They are. They're going to be sinning against people as well.
And many of those people, Austin, before you had even gotten to the church, that they had been trained to be divisive about that particular issue. And I am sure many more. And so people had trained them that this is how you treat people who have different, I guess, standards or convictions or whatever than you.
Right.
And that's a shame.
And I'm going to say something that's going to kind of sound weird. There is a place to which you have to be rough with somebody, but it's a matter of orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Are they actually hurting the gospel? Are they hurting the church? Is it time to flip tables? Other than that, like, this is a matter. These were all tertiary issues. If you want to go back to our podcast from a couple weeks ago,
on the
these
triage.
These were all the differences were small things. But the thing is like the other danger is I had a leader of the school, and I'll just tell this just as it is, who when he started having some inappropriate time with a female staff member.
And just to be clear, this is not our current. Not our current.
No, he's long gone. Brother Robbie had just came on staff, and I confronted him about that. The
other person, not me.
Yeah, Robbie. But this guy, so we have, back then, our servers for our internal communication were hosted on site. That's before you had Telegram that was hosted in the cloud and all that stuff. So it was all hosted there.
All right.
For those who don't know, I'm a massive tech nerd. I've always hosted my own things. And
nerd.
I am.
Nerd. I like that.
Anyways, him and that lady started talking about how they were going to get back at me by punishing my daughter and my son.
Yeah, that'd take you off right there.
He went and started yelling at my wife to the point where I had to tell him, you're not to go to that classroom. I'm the principal. He was purposely going out of his way. And then we found all that communication. I brought that to the school board, and the school board wanted to fire him that moment. But I was trying to play the high road, and I had to learn real quick that you don't always play fair with troublemakers. But I was trying to do the high road. And along the way, just to make a long story short, by the time this thing all ironed out, sitting on the front porch with my daughter, who was a junior higher at the time, who's always been a straight A student, whose teacher was berating her in front of the class, saying, you shouldn't be like Alyssa. Alyssa's a bad kid, publicly in front of the rest of her junior high class. Now, Robbie, you taught Alyssa. Would you define her as a bad kid?
Absolutely not.
She's probably one of the easier students you probably have.
Absolutely.
Except for trying to run everybody out of the class by telling them.
Aside from constantly lying to everybody,
she's a prankster. She's a girl after my own heart in some way.
Yeah,
smart aleck, but she's the quintessential first child.
Yeah,
super high. Driven, achiever. She went to college with a full ride scholarship. That's just who she is.
I mean, she is very smart aleck.
Yeah.
But I mean, I consider that a positive.
Right.
So
yeah.
But
you have to be smart to be a smart aleck.
Yeah.
This junior high teacher that was talking with the principal and this is the school that I founded.
Right.
This is a school my kids were going to. This is a school attached to my church. So we go from one fire. We have 3 years apiece into this fire, and sitting on the front porch with my daughter, who used to be outgoing, all of a sudden became very selective about her friends, who used to love church and love school, went to a point where she didn't want to be at school anymore, didn't love school anymore. And me as a father going, I should have fired them. I shouldn't allow anybody to just hurt people like that. So, I mean, ministry is rough because had I just fired him, there would have been a whole bunch of people would be like, well, see, pastor, of course, anybody who disagrees with him, he'd fire.
Yeah.
But all the school board who was privy to all the things that were said because they had all the communications wanted to get rid of him. But they kept that secret because they wanted to make everything above reproach and they didn't want to make him look bad. There's a lot of things your pastors go through that we don't share for the
and their
sake,
families
that we don't share for the sake of the ministry. And pastor kids, you wonder why pastor kids often go through these wild phases. A lot of times it's this hurt that was never dealt with. So
I will say, kind of sharing what your daughter went through. It is a blessing from God that that she continued on in church and is still in church and faithfully serves to this day. I can tell you, as someone who also grew up as a pastor's kid or a person in ministry's kid, I thank God a lot because there were things that I knew because my dad was either the pastor or involved usually
at
like
that
high up level. And he wouldn't talk to me about stuff, but he'd talk to my mom about stuff. And so I would overhear things. And so as a teenager, I'd have to go to church and I'd know things. And sometimes it was like struggles people were going through, things like that. That wasn't the problem. It was knowing about people who were actively being duplicitous. And like I have one particular memory of a person coming up in church and shaking my hand and smiling at me. But I know all the stuff that they're doing. And looking back, it's kind of a legitimate miracle that kind of thing did not wreck my faith. And I'm very gracious to God's grace to me in that. And what it really taught me was that, yes, there are people in churches that are fake, right? Because that's what a lot of people say is that there are hypocrites in church, right? And I can tell you, as someone who serves in ministry and who grew up in a ministry family, that is absolutely true. But for every like fake person, I also saw all these real people.
Yeah.
And I thank God that He gave me the eyes to see that. because I think what happens to a lot of people is they only see the problems, and they don't see the way that God's working in so many ways. We can be very negative in that way.
Yeah.
And so I think that would help a lot of people if they learned to be able to see that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I don't want to be negative. I love the bride. I love the church. I love being at church. I love being with people on the Lord's Day. I look forward to it. Like, really, and I shouldn't be this way because it's kind of dangerous to be this way because every day is holy unto the Lord. But sometimes I feel like Monday or, Saturday through, I guess Monday through Saturday is just this hyphenation I'm waiting to end to get back to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
I love church. I love the people. People aren't always lovable, but neither am I.
Mm-hmm.
And more than anything, no matter what you've gone through, no matter what hurt you're going through or perceived, whether real or perceived, choose to love your church family like a family and try to work things out.
You just said something that made me spark the next question here. So you said people aren't always lovable, but neither am I, right? Were there any examples or are there any times where like your pride caused hurt for other people?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Most of my pride issues over the years have been, and here's the danger of 20-something years in ministry.
Mm-hmm.
I've had so many people quit on me or just like have a bad attitude. It's kind of like, well, they're probably going to leave anyway.
Mm.
That's,
you get a little jaded, sort of.
You get a little jaded.
Mm-hmm.
And you've probably seen that because that just happened not that long ago. I'm going to be careful what I say, but something came up and I was kind of like, well, they're probably going to leave anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I shouldn't be that way. And then I get home and I'm laying in bed and the Holy Spirit won't let me go to sleep because it's like, Lord, I do love them.
Yeah.
Help me to love them if they don't leave.
Yeah.
Help me to love them right. I would say, have I been perfect? No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't be something that only Christ can be.
No. And my biggest sins have been in being reactionary. And that's because I'm a very reactionary person. That's why that's one of the things I love having Pastor Robbie on staff because he's the most unactionary person I've ever met. I don't mean that in a bad way.
I just lay around. I do nothing. I don't no actions at all.
That's literally what his job is. Just lay around.
Yeah, but I'm very quick to react, and he's very good about stopping and just acting. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I love the plurality of elders because sometimes I get mad and I just step back and I wait to chill.
Mm-hmm.
And like over the last probably 3 years, every time we have disciplinary issues in the church, if they're absolute boneheads, I almost always bring Robbie in because I want to go, you idiot, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And we get him in and I'm like, Robbie, you have anything? He's like, what are you going through?
Yeah,
Why did you get that?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I'm so glad he started because it makes me, because then they open up and I'm like, oh, I'm glad he led the conversation.
Also, what you're doing there is really highlighting the importance of having a plurality of elders.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because if it's just up to one personality, that can't cover all those.
Especially somebody who can be a bit hard-nosed like me.
Right.
But at the same time, God, you also need elders who are very good at picking fights. And I'm exceptionally good at that.
I was about to say, well, I don't know if I'd phrase it as good at picking fights, but like someone who can be more, what's the word, like not abrasive, but very honest and isn't afraid to say things like they are. And so ideally, you have an elder that's very good at that and another elder that's a little bit more calm and willing to communicate and ask questions. And because you really do need both of those. And it takes a lot of wisdom to know which one you need. And sometimes people need both.
Yeah. I've discovered like particularly young men react very well to edgy abrasiveness. Women, you got to be a little bit more careful.
Yeah.
And after years of marriage, I've finally gotten better at that and having a daughter, but still it's not my absolute forte.
Let me ask you a question though, based on what you're just saying there. Do you feel like you're any better at listening now than you used to be?
I'm sorry, what?
Not you. You've never been able to listen.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I would think that like some of those things have clarified how you respond.
So here's the weird thing. I'm a little jaded about people exiting, but I'm also way more emotional about the people. This is going to sound, I say this and I'm going to bring back a phrase from the 90s, no homo.
No homo. Yeah.
No homo.
Yeah.
I cry easier over some things more than I used to.
Yeah.
Like I'll have a counseling session. I'll see a marriage falling apart. I hold it together, and then later it bothers me deeper than it used to.
Yeah.
And especially when it's families that I've pastored for years. Yeah.
Well, that kind of goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning of this episode when I was saying watching people make decisions that you know are going to hurt them.
Yeah.
The grieving that you do.
Yeah.
And you may not do it right in front of them, but I mean, you're still thinking about them the rest of the day. And sometimes you're having trouble sleeping because you're like, man, what if I'd said this? What, maybe if I talked to them one more time or I'd done it like this, maybe then it could, you can run those different scenarios through your mind over and over again because of the heartache, because of the heartache of the people you're trying to reach and work with.
Yeah, and until we get to the other side of glory, we're all going to fail each other.
Yeah, there's no perfection, right?
And we're saying a lot of this stuff from the perspective of pastors, but honestly, a lot of these things can apply to people, non-pastors in the church as well, who can suffer from gossip. They can suffer from seeing people suffer. They can they can suffer from all of these same things.
And one of the things I started praying for probably about 4 years ago, we had so many people leave under bad pretenses, people who had left. And I started praying. I said, God, I've never seen anybody restored. And God has restored a few families from some of those old fights. And I love having them in the church. I love their kids are coming back
after
as
years.
Adults. Their kids are in our schools, and I get to pour into the kids. And so I thank God for restoration. And that's been one of my greatest joys of seeing some of that restoration after 17 years of being a Grace Point, all the fights we went through for the first 5-6 years. And after those fights, we kind of went through this valley as a church where we didn't grow, but we were theologically growing.
Yeah.
And now to start seeing good leadership come in and starting to see good churchmen and starting to see some fruit for that. I'm sitting there thinking, man, if some of those old families would stay, they'd have been with us on this journey. And we lost some good people along the way that I wish we wouldn't have lost. There are some things, like I would say this, like during some of our early fights, like I said, I'm one of those people you bop on the nose and I dig in.
I'm going to punch you back 2 times harder.
Oh, yeah. And that's not biblical. We're not supposed to tit for tat with people, but I'm a fighter. It's my nature.
I'm a lover.
Yeah.
You're a fighter.
Lover and a fighter.
There are some families that ended up losing because I was bitter.
Okay.
I would say that there were families I lost who the fight happened and they just seen me as bitter afterwards and they just moved down the road.
Yeah.
And they didn't necessarily leave on bad terms.
Yeah.
And I look at that. I'm glad I went through that. There's no way I would have learned that had I not gone through that. God used that for me. And I don't think I'd ever find myself back in that location again.
So you would shepherd them differently now.
Oh, yeah.
Would have. Yeah.
It would be already like the battles we have nowadays. It's not the same.
It's nothing compared
No,
to
it's nothing. We shepherd the people well. So, yeah.
What about how you confront issues?
Me or Robbie?
Well, both.
Well, for me, I mean, I have probably the opposite problem that Austin has is that I've had to learn to confront people because I'm not by nature a confrontational person. In fact, I was just this week, I learned something somewhat concerning about someone that I knew, and I was like, they need to hear this, but I'm like, how do I say it? Am I gonna upset them? And I know some people are like, I don't care if I upset them. I'm just gonna say it. If they know. Austin just raised his hand. And so, but to me, one, I don't particularly like people being mad at me.
Yeah.
two, I don't want to lose this person.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I've learned from times I've been silent in the past that is not the way to go.
Right.
And so I just have to pray and say, what is, for knowing this person, what is the wisest way that I can
confront
say what needs to be said? And thankfully, in this particular situation, I said what needed to be said. Thankfully, it was taken well.
Mm-hmm. And did you pray over that? Like, what was your approach to how you?
I did, and I prayed about it. I texted my wife and just kind of briefly explained the situation because she knows this person too. And I said, "Hey, could you pray? I'm gonna have to give an answer to this fairly. I'm gonna have to handle this fairly soon.
Yeah,
and I need to know. I kind of know what I need to say, but I need to say it.
Just pray for the right words in the right way. Yeah.
And when you ripped into Brian,
who's Brian?
It's still
who's Brian?
Yeah, that guy.
There's actually like 4 Bryans in our church.
It's actually the most common name. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, it's ridiculously common in our church.
Yeah, there's 2 Y's and 2 I's.
Yeah.
4.
So anyways,
yeah.
I put that out there. Now everybody listening to the podcast would be like, "Which Brian?"
Those guys are terrible, though. All of them.
No, it's for me. I tend to not care if I upset somebody. I don't believe that totally. Well,
because I've seen how it can affect you. You're abrasive in the way that you do it because that's your style. But like you.
I love them.
You want it to work. You're not doing it because you're trying to be mean. You want it to work.
I never want to be mean.
Style.
And that's what I was getting ready to say. What I have learned is that if you're an abrasive person, you better love embracively also. So if your love style matches your correction style, people understand. People don't care what you know until they know you care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And if people honestly know you care about them, you can be embracive with them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think there's an art to knowing who to be embracive with. Because, like, I'm just going to say this. There's certain, like, when it comes to our staff in our school, I've had a few people join our staff over the years, and then they see an abrasive side of me come out, and they're like, well, this don't seem like you. You're so happy-go-lucky. I'm like, well, if I'm paying you to flip burgers, you better be flipping burgers.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds mean, but you're being paid. Do what you're being paid for.
Yeah. You're not being paid to sit on your phone.
You're not going to be on your phone.
Yeah.
You're not going to be Facebooking, Instagramming.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
You're going to be watching these kids. You're going to be paying attention. You're going to be,
Yeah.
And it's funny because everybody thinks these pastors are just supposed to be. My job is the truth. It's not. This is a school. It's
you're also not shepherding them well if you don't
correct them.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
At the same time, I've learned that if I take an honest interest in their life, not a fake interest, but an honest interest, I can be honest with
people. Can tell the difference, can't they?
Yeah. But here's the thing: you start developing relationships where you take honest interest in people. People will be honest with you, and you better have thick skin to take it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And look at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, when anybody leaves, it hurts, is what I'm hearing. But at the same time, maybe there are times when people should leave. I think. One of you said, I can't remember who said it, but
it's called the backdoor revival.
The backdoor revival. Okay.
Backdoor revival. There are people who come in as what the Bible calls as scorners. And the Bible says, mark them that cause division and have nothing to do with them. There are people that the Bible says the elders, if they're doing their job, are to drive out of the church. The problem is a lot of baby Christians see that and they think we're just being mean, where we're actually trying to protect the flock.
This is a weird question because maybe you can't actually ever see it on the backside, but has anybody ever left to your knowledge where you're like, it was actually way better for them that they did leave? They're better off going X place.
Oh, yeah. I've seen people leave and I'm sad to see them go. And then I run into them. And that's the thing is I've been in the ministry so long that all the Reformed preachers in Marion County all know me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they leave our church and they inevitably end up at a church where their pastor, the new pastor, is a friend of mine of some sort.
Yeah.
Or an acquaintance.
Yeah.
And so then we end up running into them at these conferences and stuff that I preach at. And I have witnessed them move on to us. And they were immature when they left. and something happened at that new church, whether there was somebody they clicked with who discipled them or something, and I watched them go on to maturity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because what you just said was like maybe it was the community that they went to or whatever, but I think that there is this is going to sound weird, but there's like a healing that can happen inside of when you gain community. And so if they didn't have that where they were at, and then they are able to achieve that in a new place, sometimes they can actually move beyond that because of the people around them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ever since I cut the tip off that finger, we're at 53 minutes.
Quit cutting your finger. We've been long a lot. We should probably.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Let me go get.
One thing, Austin, though, you never finished your story from earlier. Did your wife ever give up her cross-dressing?
Her cross-dressing.
I'm gonna totally clip this out and just play it for my wife. Be like, Robbie called you a cross-dresser.
Yes, definitely.
That's what I need to do.
Definitely.
That's why I said it.
Yeah. Then it's going to be like printed across the school somehow, like one of those things.
It's funny when we go visit the old town where I was a youth pastor at for 7.5 years, my wife will not enter that town without wearing a dress.
Really?
Yep. Because she's afraid she'll run into some of those old people. And some of it is for good reason. Because in her mind, when she left the teenagers that we had great influence over, she wants to make sure that she's not hurting her influence that she had over them.
Because they would interpret that as her like
falling away from the faith, like extremist. My mindset is don't do that. Let them know that they're a bunch of legalists and they need to grow up, And again, that's the two different personalities.
Speaking of, we need another brother bondage article.
We do. I haven't the ones I originally wrote.
That's okay. You can update them.
Yeah, that's what I need to do. Is I need to update the brother bondage article. I wrote a series on that years ago, and it was actually letters I actually mailed to people who were going through that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to Altars and Ashes podcast. Stand firm, build faithfully, and let your household and your church burn bright as altars to the King.